All right, let's dive into a topic that seems really straightforward but is actually full of some surprising twists and turns: employment tax in Malaysia. You'd think, hey, if I work here, I pay tax here. Simple, right? But what happens when you work somewhere else? Well, the answer is probably not what you're expecting.
So let's just get right to the big question. Picture this. You're working overseas, your salary is paid into an overseas bank account. It just seems obvious that you wouldn't owe any Malaysian tax, right? Well, that very logical assumption could turn out to be a really costly mistake. Let's find out why.
To get our heads around these pretty complex rules, we're going to follow a few people, our cast of characters for today. Think of their situations as little puzzles that we're going to solve together. From Mr. Cisco, working in Malacca, to Romley, our international pilot, their stories are going to show us exactly how Malaysian employment tax works.
Okay, first things first, let's build our foundation. We're going to start with the most basic, most straightforward rule, the one that, honestly, probably makes the most sense to all of us.
It all boils down to one critical phrase from the Income Tax Act: exercised in Malaysia. Now, that sounds a bit formal, but the idea is simple and super powerful. If you are physically doing your job on Malaysian soil, the income you earn for that specific work is generally seen as having a Malaysian source. Let's make this real with Mr. Siko. He works for a company based in London, but for this whole year, he's stationed in Malacca. Now, because he is exercising his employment right here in Malaysia, his income is taxable here. It doesn't matter one bit that his employer is in the UK. So the big takeaway is this: where the work actually gets done often trumps who's signing the paycheck.
Okay, so that was the easy part. Pretty straightforward, right? Well, now let's add a little twist to the story: travel. This is where things start to get really interesting.
So meet Maria. She has a full-time job in Malaysia, but she decides to take her annual leave and go back home to England for a bit. She gets her salary for that holiday time, of course, but since she wasn't physically in Malaysia when she got that pay, is it still taxable here? What do you think?
And the answer to that question reveals our next big principle. The law doesn't just look at where she is, it asks why she got that holiday pay in the first place. Her leave is considered attributable to the work she does all year round in Malaysia. Basically, she earned that benefit here, so the source of that income is still her Malaysian job, even while she's in England. So yep, it is taxable.
Now let's look at Mr. Sam. He's a sales manager. He spends about 3 months of the year traveling abroad, promoting his company's products. But look at how his job is actually structured. All the prep work, that happens in Malaysia. Then he goes on his trip, and when he gets back, he prepares all the follow-up reports in Malaysia. His time overseas is basically sandwiched between tasks he does here. So, because his duties overseas are so deeply connected to his main job based in Malaysia, they aren't seen as separate at all. That travel income is considered just an integral part and extension of his Malaysian employment. And because of that, it's taxable right here.
So far, we've been focused almost entirely on where the work gets done. But now, we're going to pivot, because sometimes the most important question isn't where you are, but who you work for.
Okay, let's look at 3 very different people. We've got Susan, a company director who lives and works completely in Hong Kong. Then there's Ramley, a pilot who is constantly flying across borders. And finally, Dr. Ali, who works for the Malaysian government but is posted in New Zealand. You see the pattern? They all work outside Malaysia, and yet, all of them owe tax here. What's going on?
Here's the key. For these very specific roles, the rules just pivot. If you are a director of a Malaysian company, if you're part of the crew on a Malaysian airline, or if you're a citizen working in public service overseas, your income is automatically considered to be derived from Malaysia. It doesn't matter where in the world you actually perform your duties. Whew! Okay, after all these rules about what is taxable, let's talk about a major exception. This is a really big one, especially for anyone on a short-term assignment. I want you to remember this number, 60. It is the key to a really important tax exemption. So here's the deal with the 60-day rule. If you're considered a non-resident for tax purposes, which generally means you spend less than 182 days here in a year, and you work in Malaysia for 60 days or less, your income from that work is exempt. It's a pretty generous rule, but you've got to be careful, because there are some important exceptions. It does not apply to public entertainers or directors of Malaysian companies. All right, we've covered where you work, why you're paid, and who you work for. There's just one last piece to this entire puzzle: when you get the money.
Malaysia's tax system operates on what's called a receipt basis, and this is a simple but absolutely vital concept. It just means you pay tax on income in the year you actually get the money, not necessarily the year you did the work. So, for example, if you earned a big commission for your 2023 sales, but it was only paid out to you in January 2024, it gets taxed in 2024.
Now, this whole receipt basis rule creates a really unique and, frankly, kind of weird situation for people who are leaving the country. To see how this plays out, let's look at our final case study, Mr. Lee.
Okay, here's Mr. Lee's situation. He retires and leaves Malaysia for good at the end of 2024, but he still has some leave pay owed to him, which trickles in during January and February of 2025. By then, he's no longer in the country. So when on earth is that money taxed?
And this brings us to a final, really important choice. The default rule is actually pretty tough on him. All the pay he receives in 2025 gets pulled back and taxed as if he got it all in 2024, the year he left. But he can make a special request. It's called an election to have that income taxed in the year he actually receives it, 2025. Now, depending on his tax brackets for those 2 years, this choice could have a huge impact on his final tax bill.
So, after all that, what's the real story with Malaysian employment tax? Is it just about where you happen to be standing when you do your job? Or is it about something deeper? The reason, the source, the why behind your paycheck? As we've seen, it's a fascinating mix of both. And it's a great reminder that when it comes to taxes, the details really do matter just as much as the location.